1918, Bergmann MP-18, the world's first practical submachine gun. Designed by the legendary Hugo Schmeisser, it was Germany's secret weapon for their elite stormtrooper units during the final days of World War I. Unlike the heavy, water-cooled machine guns of the era, the MP-18 was truly portable. It featured a side-loading snail magazine originally meant for the Luger pistol, and a heavy wooden stock that made it feel like a carbine. The MP-18 was so effective at clearing trenches that the Treaty of Versailles specifically banned Germany from manufacturing or owning them after the war. It proved that a high volume of pistol fire was more valuable in close quarters than a single powerful rifle shot. 1921, Thompson M. 1921, the Tommy gun. Perhaps the most iconic firearm in American history. Originally designed by General John T. Thompson to be a trench broom for the Great War, it arrived just as the fighting ended. Failing to find a massive military contract, it found a different home on the streets of Prohibition-era America. Known as the Chicago typewriter or the chopper, its signature 50 or 100-round drum magazines and vertical foregrip made it the ultimate weapon for both Al Capone's syndicate and the early FBI. At $200 in 1921, a Thompson cost as much as a small Ford car. It was the high-status iPhone of the firearm world. Expensive, beautifully machined, and devastatingly effective. 1929, Irma EMP. As Europe moved toward another conflict, designers began looking for ways to make SMGs more reliable and easier to handle. The Irma EMP introduced a forward vertical grip that housed the recoil spring, a unique design that made the gun incredibly controllable during full auto fire. It saw extensive action during the Spanish Civil War and served as a bridge between the heavy pioneer guns and the mass-produced weapons of the 1940s. 1938, MP 3840. As the German Wehrmacht prepared for the Blitzkrieg, they needed a weapon that was faster and cheaper to build than the wooden-stocked guns of the past. The MP-38 and its successor, the MP-40, changed everything. It was the first SMG to eliminate wooden parts entirely, using stamped steel and plastic-like bakelite. It also introduced the folding metal stock, making it the perfect choice for paratroopers and tank crews who needed to fit in tight spaces. Despite being universally called the Schmeisser by Allied troops, Hugo Schmeisser actually had nothing to do with its design. It was the work of Heinrich Vollmer. Regardless of the name, it became the unmistakable symbol of the German soldier during World War II. 1939, Beretta Model 38. While Germany and America focused on raw power or ease of production, Italy focused on quality. The Beretta Model 38 was widely considered one of the finest-made submachine guns of the era. It featured two triggers, one for semi-auto and one for full auto, and an exceptionally high build quality that made it accurate even at longer ranges. It was so well regarded that even German SS units preferred it over their own MP-40s when they could get their hands on one. By 1940, the world was at war, and the boutique submachine guns of the previous decade were too slow and too expensive to manufacture. The era of hand-fitted wood and polished steel was over. To survive, nations needed weapons made of stamped metal, welded tubes, and sheer grit. 1941, PPSH-41, the Soviet drum. When the Nazi Wehrmacht invaded the Soviet Union, the Red Army needed a way to arm millions of peasants almost overnight. The answer was the papasha. It was a crude, brutal weapon made of stamped steel and a chrome-lined barrel that could handle the freezing Russian winter. It featured a massive 71-round drum magazine, and during the Battle of Stalingrad, entire Soviet companies were armed with nothing but this gun. It fired so fast it sounded like a literal buzzsaw. It turned the urban ruins of Russia into a death trap for German soldiers, who often threw away their own MP-40s to pick up a captured PPSH-41 for its superior firepower. 1941, Sten gun, the plumber's nightmare. Britain was broke, exhausted, and desperate after the disaster at Dunkirk. They needed a gun they could build in a bicycle shop for pennies. The Sten was the answer. It was essentially a metal tube with a bolt and a spring inside. It was ugly. The side-loading magazine made it awkward to carry, and it was famous for jamming if you didn't hold it correctly. It cost only $9 to manufacture in 1941. Despite its reputation as a plumber's nightmare, it was easy to hide, making it the primary weapon for the French resistance and paratroopers dropping behind enemy lines. 1942, M3 grease gun. The U.S. Army realized the legendary Thompson was far too heavy and expensive for mass warfare. They needed an American version of the Sten. The M3 was its ugly younger brother, made of two halves of stamped sheet metal welded together. It looked more like a tool you'd find in a mechanic's garage than a firearm. Its slow rate of fire made it incredibly easy to control, and it was so rugged that it stayed in U.S. military service for over 50 years, finally being retired after the Gulf War in 1991. 1942, Owen gun, the Australian oddity. In the brutal jungles of the Pacific, most submachine guns failed due to mud and sand. Australia's answer was the Owen gun. It featured a unique top-mounted magazine, which allowed gravity to help feed the rounds and kept the bottom of the gun sealed from dirt. It was widely considered the most reliable SMG of World War II. Australian soldiers loved it so much they refused to replace it with newer British designs for decades. 1954, Uzi. Following the war, the newly formed State of Israel needed a weapon that was compact enough for tank crews but powerful enough for infantry. Major Uziel Gal designed the Uzi with a bolt-over-barrel layout, meaning the magazine sat inside the pistol grip. This made the gun incredibly short and balanced, allowing it to be fired with one hand. The Uzi became the global face of the 1980s. From Hollywood action movies to the Secret Service agents guarding President Reagan, the Uzi's silhouette became the ultimate symbol of the high-stakes Cold War era. 1959, Sterling SMG. The British finally replaced the crude Sten with the Sterling. It kept the side-loading magazine but added a curved design and a much more reliable feeding system. It was the peak of old-school metal submachine guns. If the design looks familiar, it's because George Lucas used the Sterling as the base for the E-11 blaster rifles used by stormtroopers in Star Wars. In the real world, it served the British Army faithfully for over 30 years, from the jungles of Malaya to the streets of Northern Ireland. By the mid-1960s, the submachine gun faced a crisis. The rise of the assault rifle threatened to make the pistol-caliber carbine obsolete. To survive, the SMG had to evolve from a spray-and-pray trench cleaner into a surgical instrument of precision. 1966, Heckler & Koch MP5. The king of SMGs. Before the MP5, submachine guns were notorious for being inaccurate because they fired from an open bolt position. Heckler & Koch changed everything by using a roller-delayed blowback system, allowing the gun to fire from a closed bolt. This gave the MP5 the accuracy of a rifle in a package the size of a submachine gun. The MP5 became a global legend during the 1980 Iranian embassy siege. When the British SAS stormed the building on live television, they were armed with MP5s. Overnight, every SWAT team and counter-terror unit on the planet decided they needed one. It remains the gold standard for police elite units to this day. 1987, Colt 9mm SMG. As the AR-15 platform began to dominate the American military, Colt developed a 9mm version for law enforcement. It looked exactly like a shrunken M16, using the same controls and ergonomics that soldiers already knew. It proved that you didn't need a radical new design to be effective. You just needed a platform that people were already comfortable with. 1990, FN-P90, the space gun. Designed by FN Herstal in Belgium, the P90 was built for a new category, the personal defense weapon, PDW. It was intended for truck drivers and support troops who needed something small but capable of piercing body armor. It featured a radical bullpup design and a 50-round horizontal magazine that sat on top of the barrel. Because of its futuristic, alien look, the P90 became a sci-fi icon, most notably as the primary weapon in the Stargate franchise. Despite its age, it is still used by the U.S. Secret Service today. 2001, Heckler & Koch MP7. H&K's answer to the P90. The MP7 is essentially a miniaturized assault rifle that fits in a holster. It fires a high-velocity 4.6mm round designed specifically to defeat modern Kevlar vests. It is famously the weapon of choice for Navy SEAL Team 6. Its ultra-compact size makes it the ultimate hidden firepower for high-profile protection details and specialized raids where every inch of space matters. 2009, Krios Vector. One of the most radical departures in firearm engineering, the Vector was designed to solve the oldest problem in SMG history, muzzle climb. It uses the Super V recoil mitigation system, which directs the energy of the bolt downward into a cavity behind the magazine rather than backward into the shooter's shoulder. It has one of the highest rates of fire in the world, yet it remains incredibly flat during full autofire. Its sci-fi aesthetic has made it a staple in modern blockbusters like John Wick and Resident Evil. 2015 CZ Scorpion EV-03. While other companies focused on exotic calibers, CZ focused on reliability and affordability. The Scorpion Evo-3 brought the SMG back to its roots, a simple, blowback-operated 9mm that was easy to maintain and highly modular. It quickly became the everyman's SMG, adopted by security forces in over 20 countries. 2020 Sig Sauer MPX, the MP5 killer. For 50 years, the MP5 was untouchable, but the Sig MPX arrived with a modern gas piston system that allows it to run cleaner and more reliably, especially when using a suppressor. It uses AR-style controls, making the transition for modern soldiers seamless. The MPX has already begun replacing the aging MP5 in elite units like the FBI's hostage rescue team. It represents the pinnacle of current SMG technology, modular, suppressed, and incredibly fast. From the mud-clogged trenches of 1918 to the high-tech, smart optic platforms of 2026, the submachine gun has refused to die. It has evolved from a blunt instrument of chaos into a precision tool for the modern warrior. The technology changes, but the mission remains the same: total dominance in the closest of quarters.